The ideas that gave birth to our nation are the ideas that our nation is resistant to right now, and we should talk about that all the time.
In a world where narratives are shaped by corporations and gatekeepers, independent voices matter more than ever. Badlands Media brings together citizen journalists, researchers, and independent thinkers.
The truth is triggering.
Question the narrative. Explore the facts.
It's authenticity, courage, resilience.
Search for the truth others won't.
It's not about being first or being right.
The information war is changing.
It's about being authentic.
Embrace the friction.
Embrace the friction.
Shut the f*** up.
Authentically antagonizing. Join the movement.
I'm going to say how I feel.
Follow Badlands Media.
This is about the future.
The Badlands. What are the Badlands? Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Culture of Change. We're going to have a great conversation tonight of the Aether as the fingerprint of God. And I'm excited about it. John Drake is back by popular demand and by promise, because we got through like a third of the conversation we were going to have the last time that he was on the show. And he has graciously joining me to record this show. This is a recorded show because as it is airing, it is my birthday, and I'm hoping to be doing something fun. Not that hanging out with you guys isn't fun, because it always is, but I would like to not be attached to the computer on the evening of my birthday. So recorded show, but it's going to be a great discussion. Before we get into that discussion and before I bring on John, we are going to talk about frequency apps. Awesome sponsor of the show. Everything must go at Frequency Apps. This is your chance to stock up before inventory is gone. Frequency Apps created easy-to-apply wellness patches designed for everyday support with no messy creams, no complicated routines, or harsh ingredients. Simply apply a patch and enjoy around-the-clock convenience wherever life takes you. You can choose from over 50 patch options for support with weight management, stress, discomfort, sleep, focus, hormone balance, immune support, and more. Whether you're trying Frequency App for the first time or grabbing your favorites before they're gone, now is the time to save. During this liquidation event, Frequency Apps is giving our audience 15-day supply completely free. That's right. You'll get a full 45 days of relief for the price of just 30 days. Don't wait. Shop the liquidation sale now and grab your favorites before they disappear. Go to badlandsmedia.tv/patches today. badlandsmedia.tv/patches. There's no coupon code needed. Simple, safe, natural. Start your journey to better health now. This offer excludes ACG, GLP-1, and Plastigon patches. So definitely take advantage of that great sale happening over at badlandsmedia.tv/patches. As I've said before, I've used a lot of different patch type products for, medication, cessation, all sorts of things. And I've always had an issue with the adhesive. It's always irritated my skin, and the Frequency Apps patches do not do that. Whatever adhesive they use for their patches does not irritate the skin, in my experience. Of course, it's not medical advice, but medical advice often convinces you to poison yourself. So go head over to badlandsmedia.tv/patches, and then we're also going to talk about the Badlands Shop. Have you checked out the Badlands Shop lately? You might be surprised at what you've been missing. From thoughtful gifts and unique finds to everyday household essentials and personal care must-haves, there's truly something for everyone at Badlands Shop. But here's what makes it different. Every single purchase you make is so much more than buying stuff. You're investing directly in the movement, you're empowering America First businesses, and you're lifting up fellow Badlanders and supporting the creators who are building this community with us. Thank you for being a part of this. Your support means everything. Head over to badlandsmedia.tv/shop or click shop on the main menu at badlandsmedia.tv and discover your new favorite brands. One more time, that's badlandsmedia.tv/shop. All right. Without further ado, we're going to bring on John Drake. What is up, my friend?
Good evening. And since we are time traveling, and it's not technically your birthday right now, it's your birthday right then. So happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It is good to be alive for another year. And we're heading into what a time to be alive. Burning Bright and I recorded the Blitz today as well, because we're recording on Friday. And we were talking about, the golden age and transformation program to get us from point A to point B, and which is kind of, aside from all shows being Why We Vote, it's the only thing I talk about now, because I think we need to talk about it all the time. The fact that we are being herded by progressives into a future that we might not want. But that's not this conversation tonight. Yeah. This conversation tonight, we are going to talk. So the last time you were on, we talked about juries. Trial by jury, and we're going to have a really good time doing a jury experience at the upcoming GART in Deadwood, South Dakota. In fact, why don't we just talk about Deadwood, South Dakota really quickly? Yeah. And June 25th to the 28th, Badlands Media is heading back to Deadwood, South Dakota for the 12th stop on the Great American Restoration Tour. Whether you're attending in person or virtually, a GART veteran or a GART virgin, there is something for everyone. Merch packages are also available for both in-person and virtual ticket holders. Get your GART 12 tickets today at badlandsmedia.tv/events. And the last time that we were in Deadwood, John Drake and I almost got arrested.
Because of one of these. This is, I showed this on the live stream, but this is the whip I'm working on that will be raffled off. You can see it's still in process. I have to put a knot here and a knot on the end as well, but it's Badlands color, the logo color theme. You gotta
love it.
Fall off the end there, but yeah. So this will get raffled off, and if whoever does end up getting it, if you're listening to this, make sure you come up to me and ask how to properly use it, so you don't take an ear off.
That feels like you're throwing shade, John.
Well, I mean, I've split my own skin open before, so I know what they're capable of.
Well, it's terrifying too. So I nobody 777 gave at the first Deadwood. Deadwood is just all about whips, apparently. Gave me a whip because I had won my case and defeated the NAACP League of Women Voters and Mi Familia Vota in their false allegations about accusing me of sending armed agents to voters' homes to intimidate them about their vote under the KKK Act and Voting Rights Act, Section 11B. It was always baseless, but I had won in July, won my trial, and then we had August was Deadwood. And I got that whip, and he taught me how to use it. And that whip I know how to use. Mm-hmm. Your whip is much more advanced.
It's a little more powerful.
Yeah. And it scares me a little bit.
Well,
but yeah, last time we were in Deadwood. Last time we were in
time.
Deadwood, we were seeing so the end, what's it called? The cracker.
Yeah.
So mine was all busted. And I didn't even know that. I'm like, what's a cracker? And so Drake's like, well, I can fix that. I have a couple of them. I can fix that for you. And you did. And then we're like, okay, well, do you think it's okay if I try it out? It's all John Drake's fault.
It is.
It's okay if I try it out. I can't imagine why not.
I literally said, I can't
immediately cops were upon us. That is a weapon. You cannot wield a weapon on Main Street.
Okay. Yeah. She rolls her window down and she's pulling up. I remember leaning into the window and being like, was I not supposed to do that?
Is there a problem, officer?
Was that is like George Costanza and Seinfeld. Was that wrong? I never know.
Yeah. Apparently it is. But you know what? You never know what's going to happen at Deadwood, and that's part of the fun. Yeah. Is that it's gonna be a blast. I'm so excited. Garth always comes at exactly the right time.
Mm-hmm. And I love Deadwood. Last year was my first time at Deadwood, and I'm very excited to go back.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We're gonna have a blast. But tonight we're going to talk about the Aether and the Aether as the fingerprint of God. Yes. We're gonna do a demonstration. We're gonna talk about this because this is kind of a mind bending concept, particularly in the explanation of the nature of reality as it is described to us. Sheep, right? Loosh. Mm-hmm. We're told, that things are the way that they are. But I'm going to hand it to you to explain, what the Aether is when you talk about the Aether, and I might stop you to define terms.
Sure. Yeah, please do. Well, so first of all, this is a point that I've made on my show. I've been going through the Aether series. I think this week is episode 8 of that series on Sunday. So yesterday, by the time this airs. This is an ancient debate as far as what is the nature of reality. So these are not new ideas. These are ideas that go back thousands of years. And if you distill down the debate to an either or. It really does come down to a binary, and it always boils down to atomism, atom. So stuff, particles, things versus a medium, the ether. And both of those terms have their roots in Greek philosophy. Democritus, is it? I'm going to forget his name. A Greek guy back in 2,500 years ago coined the term atom, which means indivisible or uncuttable. So if you were to zoom in to reality at the smallest level, you're going to find a little particle. That's an atom. Not necessarily the way we understand it, but that was where the word came from. The flip side of that is ether, which is essentially a Greek word that means like heavenly air, rarefied air, the air the gods breathe, kind of thing. So
Democritus.
Is Democritus? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I knew it was something.
You
Greek
almost
sounding.
said Democritus. I
Yeah, it was like on the tip of my brain. I wasn't quite sure. Anyway. So the point of bringing that up is that these are ideas that go back, and the Egyptians had certain ideas about this stuff that kind of ran along the same rails. The Babylonians, it's been going on forever. As long as people have been thinking about what is the nature of this reality we live in, it's boiled down to, well, it's a medium versus it's stuff. And today we're kind of in the and it kind of swings like in a pendulum back and forth between those two. And today we're more in a particle-based, atomist-based. Everything is stuff. Light is a photon. It's a physical particle that's traveling. There's an electron. It's a physical energy particle, and we're actually, I think, kind of in a pendulum swing back from that. The 1800s were a heavily ether focused, and I can explain why a little bit. But then with the dawn of Einstein and the beginnings of quantum mechanics and quantum theory, quantum, of course, coming from the word quant, like quantify, the idea that energy is released in quantifiable little discrete packets, and that those are physical essentially. And but because of how quantum theory is working today, it's kind of swinging back towards, man, there's something else besides stuff going on here.
And this is a bit of a side quest, but yeah. When you think about, the pendulum swinging back and forth in terms of where the theory exists, where is kind of the collective mind of the quote unquote science on these things, that dictates so much from a change management standpoint in terms of funding and resources. And so you can have, a bunch of really brilliant scientists focused on ether physics and, but if they don't get the funding and the power, the kind of shadow powers that be decide that that's not something that we're going to put resources into, then it's not going to be until the way things are, in my estimation of the world, until the shadow powers that be decide that ether physics is something that we want people to know about and talk about, there's not going to be the level of resourcing required to, that we see with particle physics or we see with, the science generally.
And if you want to put the tinfoil hat on, you can around this, which, right. Or just put another layer on.
Yes, wrap a new layer on.
It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Around the same time that investigation into an etheric medium, which was, again, all throughout the 1800s, around the same time that was transitioning away from that is about the same time that you had the rise and the surge of like germ theory, for instance, in the medical world. And that's, on the tail end of switching from monarchies to representative governments and like all this like world change all across all the different spheres, which were kind of disparate and scattered, all started getting centralized under more governing bodies like, your medical associations and your scientific associations. And a lot of the men that started those things might seemingly have had positive motivations, but they've been used to effectively control funding. Because if you're a guy right now who wants to get funding to do experimentation on ether physics and you come out and say, I'm going to do experimentation on ether physics, good luck. Yeah. You will be ostracized. And, anyway.
Well, yeah, and it's also around the same time, throughout the 19th century that our republic was inverted, that we had, the kind of the shift to more centralized power. And I'm not willing to accept that the guys that forwarded these concepts had great intentions.
Yeah.
When Edward Bernays wrote Propaganda, 1928, if I'm not mistaken, he didn't say we need an invisible hand to shape the opinions of the masses. He said there is one, right? That this is how the world works, guys. There are those of us that are in the know, and we're just going to tell you what you need to know. And that's been the guiding, that's been how it's worked, I think, forever.
And by the way, we actually worship Satan and we're his minions on earth. So, surprise.
It's no big deal. It's just don't worry about that, because you'll sound like a kook if you actually say how things really are. And we're called kooks all the time because we're not willing to not say how we see the things. And I like it. I embrace it.
Well, so for someone who's not like a scientific mind person, which I'm not scientifically trained, I think I in general have kind of an engineering kind of a mindset when it comes to various things. But for people that don't necessarily have that, the obvious question is, like, without even getting into particulars, because all I've done is sort of give the broad strokes here. Why does this even matter? What does it really matter whether or not it's an ether or it's an atom, atomistic base? And to me, the answer comes from Scripture, because the Bible is something I argue from, not for. And you can get that from Genesis 1, in the beginning, God. So that's enough of a basis to be like, the study of science is actually important because this is God's world. But then the Apostle Paul in Romans 1, verse 20, says, I'll back up to verse 19. He says, "For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his," and this is verse 20, "for his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made." Paul uses that as part of his larger case against humanity, because he says that people are without excuse then, because the things in nature clearly communicate the invisible attributes of God. So I take that, and I've been speaking a lot about this on my show. Science is inherently theological, whether someone realizes it or not. And that is exciting to me, because as a Christian, I'm curious, like, how does this stuff work? And then also, as I've really come to, having a proper view on that binary, which side of the binary you take, I think has ramifications on the type of theology that you end up with, and the conclusions that you end up reaching about God can be affected by your theology, and so therefore studying science and having the right idea about it can kind of lead you down the right path or lead you down the wrong path. So to me, that's why it's important. Whether or not someone gets nerdy about it is personality and temperament. But as far as an overarching importance to the topic and as a whole, I think Scripture kind of makes it clear.
Yeah, I think that's right. And just so the audience knows, John has written a paper about this, the ether as the fingerprint of the Trinity. He read through it last night on his show, the No Treason podcast, and it is posted in the show notes. It is the show notes tonight for Culture of Change, so folks can go and read it. And you're going to want to go back and read through it, because it's pretty meaty. And I agree with you. I don't think that we need to over explain why it's important to understand the nature of reality, because as you say in the paper, God can be known by studying his handiwork, and science, the kind of, the scientific method, the pursuit of what's true through testing, experimenting, and having a hypothesis, testing it, seeing if it's true, and adjusting and all of that, that will inevitably lead you to God in my estimation. I don't see how, which makes the manipulation of science, as we saw during COVID most notably, but I think as we've seen throughout the sciences over centuries, likely, the manipulation of science, if the scientific method and the true pursuit of knowledge and truth leads you to God inevitably, then the manipulation of that to lead you somewhere else is inherently evil.
Mhm.
And I think that we need to be real clear about that. You talk about in this paper this concept of nature is always seeking ground. And it's you go through what that means, but I think for the audience, I think that's part that really piqued my interest in this paper. And could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that's kind of how this paper even got started, because I've been doing this series on the ether, and I'm just trying to understand the concepts. Like I've said this before, that I like going through. You're going through Creature of Jekyll Island on book club.
Yeah.
And when you go through something like that, even if you know things about the topic, invariably when you
bad mood hour.
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. But when you go through stuff like that, it forces you to end up digging deeper and trying to understand more, because you're invariably, in trying to turn on and teach the stuff that you do know, you end up learning more than you knew before, and it's all awesome. So I'm just thinking through all these concepts, and there's certain things that we just accept as reality, and that nature seeks the ground is one of those things. I do a lot of home improvement DIY type stuff, and I know that if I'm going to, touch a capacitor, for instance, which is basically a stored charge, you need to ground it out first to release the charge. And if you're the shortest path to ground, then you're going to get a shock. If you're standing, if you're messing with your electrical, I'm looking over towards my basement and looking at my electrical panel. If I happen to touch something and my feet are touching the ground, I'm going to be the shortest path to ground. I'm going to get electrocuted and die. That's a known aspect of electrical, phenomenon. But if you start thinking of that in a broader sense of what's really happening there, it's like, well, there's tension, and it needs release. And so that's the first part of this little 3-page paper is we observe that same pattern in nature all over the place, within relationships, within music, within story structure, that there's a built up tension, and you feel like it's got to go. Like, you think of a roller coaster that click, 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 and you get to the top and it stops, and then you're kind of waiting there at the top, and you just feel that expectation, and then it releases as you go down the track. That's grounding. That is the same fundamental reality that is happening if you happen to touch a hot wire in your house and then get shocked.
Let me see if I'm understanding this correctly. So, if you think about our Earth, right? Mm-hmm. The things like a volcano or an earthquake are the release of a buildup of tension. Is that what you're saying? Because I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Concept. Yeah.
Or like even they say like an earthquake is, whether or not this is true, this is what they say is true. And even within what they say this works, you have two tectonic plates pushing against one another, and then they slip past each other. And that's grounding. You pull a rubber band out, it's now in a charged, torqued, stressed, stretched state, and you release, and it goes back to equilibrium, back to ground, back to rest.
And from a human standpoint, if you have, a cancer, I'm not getting into what cancer is, but if you have some, like you can have a buildup of, or stress, right? We could go with stress, like a buildup of stress. It's going to lead to a release, so the natural state is that you're going to be seeking that rest, but the circumstances and our reality construct that we're living in is building up tension that has to be released and go somewhere. Is that right?
Yeah. And so like you can see that in relationships. You say something that's cutting and mean to someone that's that you care about or whatever, and now there's there's a tear in the relationship, and there needs to be forgiveness, which is basically grounding. So you start thinking of those terms, and you realize it's not a bunch of different things.
Right.
It's all the same thing expressing itself in different ways
throughout creation. In all, it's the same thing expressing it in all of the different forms of creation in different ways.
And so the question I was asking is why?
Well, hang on, before you move on, that would kind of explain the fourth turning, right? Like if the fourth turning is real, and I think that there's evidence that there is a cyclical kind of seasonal nature. It would be, and I think they go through, right? The you have this high period, which is ostensibly the rest. You've kind of gotten through the you've gotten to kind of a catharsis or a mass resolution of whatever the prior crisis area is, and then that tension starts to build up over and over time. They don't use these terms. It's actually kind of inverted from the terms that they use, but I think conceptually we've had this kind of mass resolution type of thing for humanity as it was, and then it starts to build up the tension again over the next 80 years or so, and you end up with another crisis area, that you've got to have that break, that tension builds up, and it just repeats itself.
Yeah, and this is scalable because it's scalable on basically you zoom into the most minute aspect of reality, or all the way up to generational age of humanity size, and it's the same thing. So you can have very temporal, millisecond, nanosecond kind of tension release. That would be down like at the actual atomic level, even then down to the ether itself. Or you have across nations, across centuries, across millennia, and I mean you see it all through Scripture. And of course, immediately pops into my mind with all this stuff is Jesus in Matthew 11:28. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. I will ground you. And so that the question I'm at,
it's a very first principles thing too, isn't it? Yeah. Right? Like take it down to the studs, and what are the that's inherent in us. I would have called this, prior to reading your paper, I would have called this just human nature. Right. And it's not just human nature, right? It's the nature of creation. I've never thought about it like that ever. But the human nature of it is, there's nothing new under the sun. Right. And we are created a very specific way in the image of God, I believe. And when, so humans are going to act in human ways in accordance with humanity. And Jesus is how we defect from the worst of that. But this implies that it's even kind of, it's more a part of the design even than just human. It's not unique to humans. It's unique to creation.
Yes.
And that's very interesting.
Yeah. And the stress has a bad rap as a word, but just the stress release, the tension release, that's not inherently a bad thing.
Right.
It's the
highly frictional.
Right. It's the inability to ground that ultimately is the bad thing. And I think that's where, to get spiritual with it, that's where sin comes in and interrupts the grounding process, specifically grounding back to the ultimate source, i.e. God. That's and we keep trying to find other ways to ground ourselves that just keep building the tension. And so ultimately, if zoom in on the atomic level, and then a little bit bigger, and then you have an individual person, you have stress at your job, and that has to get released, and that stress in the family that gets released, and then you have your community, and then you have your nation, then you have your across centuries, and then so each layer is you have cycles of stress and release, and then you have an overarching layer of all of humanity, all of human history, with one big massive tension, and then release on the cross, essentially.
Wow.
I mean, so that's what excites me about this stuff, is that one of the problems I have with modern science, and I had this even as a kid, although I didn't really understand like how to process this. It's like there's no room for spirituality in modern physics.
Yeah.
None. It's all physical, it's all particles. And the spiritual turns into sort of an imaginary realm that, it's real, but we
can't know it. And so whatever you believe about it is right. That's your truth. And whatever I believe about it is right. It's my truth, but we can't scientifically understand it.
And the Apostle Paul comes along and says, actually, no, nature makes this plain, because nature literally, and this is my interpretation of it, has God's fingerprint all over it. Yeah. And the reason why, ultimately, because the question I was asking is, why
the rocks
does nature
cry out, as they say?
Yeah, exactly. Why does nature ground? Because it is literally, it's not, and I say this in the paper, it's not just merely reflecting or imitating God. It literally is participating in this stress, or in this buildup of charge, and then release, grounding. And it's not just release like out there, it's grounding back to itself, by the way. It is participating in the, or I say, in the order that flows from his nature. This is literally a description of the relationship between the three persons of the Trinity. That you and this is I double checked to make sure that I wasn't like walking into just straight up heresy. There's plenty of heresy that is associated with the nature of the Trinity, but that you have God the Father is like the source, the Son is the affection or the effection of the plan, and the Spirit is the means by which the plan is effected. And so that in every act in God's creation, all three are present, but that they're differentiated in their relationship to one another, not differentiated in their role. That's modalism. I would recommend anyone just start, do a brief read up on like what are the typical, heresies associated with the Trinity, but that because it's worth doing because the A or like the three phases of matter. That's like what the Trinity is, because you have liquid, solid, and steam and or gas, and it's because that gets into modalism and all this other kind of stuff. But
what is modalism?
That's where each person of the Trinity is like completing a certain mode or task, and it makes them, they're separate in their role, not separate in like their personhood. It gets kind of nuanced, and this is ground that is
to me. To me, it is almost maybe absolutely. I don't know if absolutely is the right, but it's heretical to even try to understand the Trinity, because we're told it's the mystery of God. And I don't think it's something that we can truly understand until we're on the other side, outside of this prison planet. But the one way that I heard it described that really resonated with me was Wesley Huff. And he was talking about how, and it wasn't necessarily describing the Trinity, but the purpose of it, or maybe a truth about it, in that God existed in relationship with himself before, no beginning, no end, right? So forever. And so he doesn't actually need us. Like, he doesn't actually need any of this. He doesn't need us for relationship. He wants us for relationship with him, but he doesn't need that, because he has, for the Trinity in its perfection, has everything contained. Now, I don't even know if saying that is heretical. It might be. I feel like as we try to explore the nature of reality with, I think, the right orientation of all glory to God, we are going to be breaking a lot of china in the Christian china shop.
Well, and I'll lean on Abraham as inspiration here. The dude argued with God. Yeah. And negotiated with negotiated with God.
Do that too.
And that was over, I think it was Sodom and Gomorrah and all that. But the fear of potentially landing in or brushing up against heresy shouldn't prevent us from the exploration.
Because I think it matters. The heart is what matters, right? It's like if we stumble into saying something that's heretical, but from a heart standpoint, we are with the intent of pursuing the truth and trying to glorify God. I don't think that God's going to send lightning strikes down to us, right? And I do think that God will give us, through the Holy Spirit, the clarity of mind to recognize our error and correct it. Yeah, and that also requires a position of humility, for sure. And that's humility before Scripture, humility before nature, and just asking questions. And once you start recognizing a pattern, and then just starting applying that pattern and doing it in humility, I think at the end of the day, no one's going to ever understand everything. And I even the stuff that, like, I feel like I understand this now way, way more than I did even like a month ago. I don't think I have even scratched the surface, because it's one thing to be like, because you can say doctrinally true things about the Trinity and then it's like, well, how does that work? I don't know. I just know it is. Like, there's a difference between knowing something is versus knowing why something is. And that gets into, so in trying to figure out, like, okay, what is the nature of reality? In the paper, I talk about this as well, that
being Greek, I'm going to draw upon the Greeks.
I love that you keep calling yourself a minority.
I am. If they're going to play that game, then I'll play it too.
Love it.
But the Greeks had the idea through their emanationist paradigm that, you know, the nature of reality is this ether that just, it has to emanate reality. Like for them, creation was a compulsory thing that this is just what the ether does. It can't, which completely flies in the face of what we understand about God, and that's fine. Because they did not take their logic far enough. Because what they did is they followed something I refer to as the principle attribute logic chain, wherein you study an attribute of something and it points to its principle. And then you study that principle and you realize, oh, that's just an attribute of a higher principle, which is an attribute of a higher principle. And eventually you get to the point where you've reached something that no longer has any markings of attribute, and that it is the terminal principle. And for them, that was the ether. And that's where you have reached the wall, and now you've found something that is just essentially eternal, that cannot be broken down into individually self-sufficient parts. It's wholly unified. The mistake they made, that the Apostle Paul ends up pointing out in Acts 17, Paul is a wonderful scientist. He leans on their philosophers, and he quotes on the speech at Areopagus in Athens, that he's like, even your poets say, in him we live and move and have our being. And that was answering a specific question that they were wrestling with, which was like, you know, how do we actually move? And because if you think of one of those like sliding tile puzzles that's missing a space, and you have to try to figure, okay, so their idea was, look, everything is stuff, then you can't actually move, because there's no open space. Because if there's open space, there's nothing there, and there can't be nothing, because then there'd be no space. And so then how do you actually move around? And so Paul's answer was, well, actually, we move around in God, basically, which kind of opens up the idea that maybe, you know, essentially we're all just literally inside of God's mind, as far as what reality actually is. Which, I mean, that's a whole other rabbit hole that I brush up against every now and again if I really want to feel.
How does that meet tension with this idea that God cannot coexist with sin?
Well, what do you mean that God cannot coexist with sin?
Well, we are separated from God because of our sin, right?
Yeah, that's a deep rabbit hole. What is actually meant by separation and all of that? Because God is omnipresent, so it's not like he's really truly separate. So what is actually meant by God separating himself from us?
Yeah,
the way I look at it through this grounding perspective is God pulled off the ground from us. Like, we're not able to spiritually ground ourselves unless that gap has been bridged.
Yeah.
What's that? Yeah, through the blood of Jesus. Exactly. Yeah. So the point with that principle attribute logic chain is you get to the point where you realize that there is so the Greeks' mistake they made was they thought that because for them the ether was not a person, it was not God, it's just the clay of reality. And
you're not arguing that the ether is God, or are you?
Oh no.
Right.
No.
Okay. I didn't think so.
Because what Paul points out to them is where you guys screwed up, and then this is my inference. You're assuming that personal, willful, and mindful creatures such as human beings could emanate from an impersonal and mindless and will-less substrate of reality. Like, that doesn't even fit their own logic. And that just shows how sin gets darkened. And that shows that Romans 1 progression, where by not acknowledging the creator, people are turned over to a darkened mind, and they just progressively get more and more stupid.
And Romans 1 is a chapter of the Bible that will make you stop reading Romans if you stop after chapter 1. Like, you got to keep going. It's actually a really beautiful letter that you get a lot of hope from. But if you just read the first chapter, then you're like, oh man, I can't do this anymore. This is making me feel terrible. You'll end up in a bad place. So read the whole book.
But the beauty of it is that it releases you from feeling like you have to prove things to people, because they already know.
There is such great comfort in Paul, I don't know, maybe Romans 11, might be 7. You'll probably know. But where he's like, I keep doing the things I don't want to do.
Yeah,
I keep
Romans 7.
Romans 7. Yeah. Like I know what I'm supposed to do. And I just keep doing all these things I'm not supposed to. There's great comfort in that. Because man, I mean, Paul's origin story to this is
Chief of sinners, he said.
Yeah. And then he gets transformed by Jesus and still says, I keep doing the things that I know I'm not supposed to do.
Yeah.
It's this nature.
And that's the aspect of knowing the truth, and just there's that we're still broken. We're
every one of us. Every single one of us is broken. And that's, where there's a missing piece. And I think that you're touching on it with this. One of the things that in reading your paper, I was thinking about is Chris Paul's reality construction work. Like how reality is built and the layers built on top of reality prime as your what is it? Principal attribute chain. Yeah. As you're describing that, it was making me think of that, and it kind of that buildup of tension that you're talking about, also seeking ground, also kind of seems like it's at least consistent with the idea that all of this stuff that's built on top of reality prime, what we really want, our id, what its desire is to get back to that base layer.
Yeah, and that's the tragedy of the human experience, is that we all, and this is like a C.S. Lewis quote. I brought this up at Nashville, that one of the evidences that he sees for there being the divine, for there being God, is that we are all seeking things to worship without being told to. And so that kind of infers that, well, there must be something to worship. That's not a standalone proof of God per se.
In us, it is a part of our nature.
Yeah.
I think it's a part of our nature to worship God, but we're in this fallen world prison planet, and so we're trying to satisfy that innate desire by.
We are essentially we are charges, we are tension, we are stress. We are in music, we are a dissonant chord that makes you just kind of go like waiting for that nice resolution.
I like the part of the music, but you know what it made me think of is EDM music, where there's that build up and 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 build up. And you're like, if you're like, so kids at raves, right?
Oh yeah.
And then there's that moment that the break comes, and then it just all kind of, there's just mass release, and everybody in the room feels it at the same time. I like the music metaphor used.
Well, so that is literally, even just using what Scripture has revealed about the nature of the Trinity, that is the nature of the relationship within the Trinity. And there's obviously limitations to that, in the sense that the Aether, by being the sort of the first level removed from God in creation, maybe that's the wrong way to put it, but it's the clay with which he has literally formed everything, including us. It does not bear his image, even though it, in its functionality, it literally just replays over and over the nature of the Trinity and how the relationship dynamics work within the Trinity. It replays that every time a beam of light flashes. It is there's a depiction of the Trinity. Every time an atom is formed, it is a depiction of the Trinity. Every time anything happens in this world, it is like a reverberation of the relationship of the Trinity. So you're saying
that's how the relationship of the Trinity works, is this kind of constant buildup and release of tension. And if that is what you're saying, then you're not using words like stress and tension as negative or sinful things. They just are, right? Because I think we would both agree that the Trinity in it is perfect.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And because in Genesis, prior to man falling, God declared creation very good. These processes were still in place. Yeah. So the problem is that the path to ground has been disrupted ultimately for us. Okay. And so because the way, so
and it was disrupted through you can be like God. Surely you can be like God. I always say you're not going to die.
Right.
You're not going to die if you just eat this fruit, then you'll get all of the knowledge and you'll be just like God. And that's the original sin, and it's the the core of all sin, right? That do what thou wilt nature of all sin.
Yeah, it's attribute seeking to be principle ultimately.
Wow.
And that's what I love about this is that, and this doesn't. It's not in the evidence column for why that this perspective is correct, but the unification of everything into very simple ideas that you just apply to different things, and this applies across mathematics, across chemistry, across astronomy, everything. You can apply these basic principles of how the ether functions, and you find like, oh wow, it's all the same thing. Of course, people listening to this, they're like, okay, well, I have no idea what he's even talking about as far as the ether. Do you want me to go into some of...
So what I want you to do is, and we're going to take a quick break real quick because the lotion raider needs to make an appearance. But what I want you to do is I want you to explain the attribute change, principal attribute change, chain rather. But I want to go like back to ground and kind of very simply what you're suggesting the ether is, not why it is or what it means, but what it is and how it works through the attribute chain. And then you have a demonstration, I think, as well, right? Okay.
Well, we will be able to see a field in the ether.
Perfect. We will be right back.
A long, long time ago, a raider went into a dangerous cave because he was on an adventure. Or like he smelled like an adventure. But the cave was protected by spiders and lizards. No, it was snakes. Snakes? Why did it have to be snakes? Whatever it was, the raider wasn't scared of it because it was Ghost, the lotion raider. Then he found the golden deodorant. That's not deodorant, that's the tallow bar. It was soft disclosure. Ghost had exactly 1 second to switch it, or the whole cave explode. And then the boulders started chasing him. Run, Ghost, run! Oh no, he dropped the soft disclosure. I got it. I understand its power now. That lotion is an important artifact, and it belongs in every household. Visit softdisclosure.com and use promo code LotionWaiter for 15% off.
I haven't seen that yet. That's
so you haven't seen it yet? No. Oh yeah, no, that's it's a lot of fun, and I like that when he's explaining the lotion is an important artifact at the end. That's my favorite part. But softdisclosure.com, use promo code LotionRaider for 15%. Also, make sure you're signed up for our soft disclosure emails. There are exclusive details, exclusive discounts, information in there, product information, all kinds of stuff. That is on that list. That's kind of your exclusive insider list at Soft Disclosure. And like I said, you will get exclusive discounts through it. So softdisclosure.com, promo code LotionRaider. All right. You're up.
Okay. So yeah, the principal attribute chain is, you can apply that to all kinds of things.
Before that, the ether is a medium.
Oh yeah, okay.
Not particles. Like start there.
Yeah. Okay. So the idea is that there is the physical, that's like what we see, the visible world, the touch, taste, smell, all that kind of stuff, down to the atom, which I don't discount that there are atoms. And then you have the substrate of reality, which would be essentially, and this is the way the Greeks understood it too, a non-physical, pure potential energy reservoir that doesn't have any Cartesian value. So it's not XYZ coordinates. It's not really anywhere, but it's also everywhere at the same time. This is the part that's the hardest to kind of wrap your mind around. The reason
kind of
why,
like air.
Well, you say like air.
Yeah, like everywhere, all around. It's just there.
Yeah, kind of like, and that's the thing is that there's you can observe the physical world, which has derived its essence from the non-physical, the ether, and they're in the same way that nature seeks ground because deriving it. That's the way the ether functions, and that ether functions that way because that's the way God functions. And God is his own ground. You can study various mediums. You can study various aspects of reality and kind of infer certain attributes of the ether itself. So the idea that, like, if I stretch a rubber band, it releases. It has that attribute to it because its principle, the ether, does. And so the ether.
Hang on. Is it also in this concept true that there is no empty space? Right? Like there's no, like I'm, sitting in front of this monitor, and between me and the monitor, I have a few items, right? But there's a bunch of space between it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's ether there.
Well, yes and no. It's the space itself, like spatial, the volume, the magnitude, the fact that anything has size to it is it's like you can think of it as like the inverse of counter space, ether being counter space. Like if you ever just sit there and think, like, well, what's the inverse of space, of volume? Like, what is the inverse of that? Like, what's the inverse of a full? What's that?
Emptiness.
Well, yeah. I mean, you could think of emptiness, but that even then, this is where you're starting to get into kind of the ooby dooby, where you're just kind of like, man, I don't even know how to describe this. It's just space, counter space, ether being counter space, and that it's just pure energy, because energy doesn't have a weight, doesn't have a smell, it doesn't have a taste, doesn't have a touch. It's just pure energy that is essentially inert. So something that would then be, this is a way that we sometimes use terms differently than you were taught growing up, like inertial is, the resistance of change and motion. Something has inertia, it resists change. The way that I would end up using it in this context, and this is not original to me, is that inertial is trying to get back to inert, back to rest. So inertial being like the grounding action, and that ether is just basic. It's like you can think of like a firecracker that hasn't been lit off. There's a lot of potential sitting there, but it's not doing anything right now until you light the fuse, agitate it, boom, it explodes. The agitation of it is what would be considered electrostatic. Like, you rub a balloon on your like a piece of wool, and then you hold it next to your hair, and then your hair accelerates towards that balloon because it has electrostatic charge to it. There's an electrostatic, the term that Michael Faraday, who did a lot of research in this in the 1800s, he coined the term dielectric, dielectric, dielectric. And that goes back to this, again, goes back to the Greeks. They coined the term electron, spelled with a K, and that was their word for amber, the petrified tree sap, because they noticed if you take amber and you rub it on wool, it'll attract little twigs and straw and fur. It had some weird attractive properties to it because it had electrostatic charge. And so that's what Faraday was playing with, was electrostatic charge. That's the dielectric. That's the buildup of tension. That's the ether being twisted, basically, although twisted is not actually what's happening, but to give the mental image. And then it has to release. And how does it release? It releases by popping out as the magnetic. That's where volume. And
is the release the hair going up, or is the release when you disconnect it and the hair falls back down?
The release
in the static electricity balloon hair example.
Trying to see how obtuse I want to be. The release is happening between the hair and the balloon. So
the buildup of tension is the rubbing.
Yeah. Well, and so here's two neodymium magnets. Okay. So I'm going to just let them go together, and they're going to go together. Okay. So I'll put on my palm so people can see. And it instantaneous action at a distance. We tend to think that magnets are being attracted to one another because that's what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
But what's actually happening is that these are essentially like lasers in the ether. They're creating a stressed state of the ether, and when those stressed state comes in proximity to each other, they have to find resolution, and the ether resolves that by grounding it. Grounding is going back to counter spatial. What's actually happening is the space between the magnets is being sucked back into the ether. So they're not being attracted to one another. The space is being removed. It is grounding back to the ether. So that's the so the release of the tension, it doesn't just go out and go forever. The release of the tension actually comes back in. So it's like you imagine a bomb that were to blow out and then come back and then blow out and then come back. And in like a magnet, that's happening at like billions or trillions of times a second. And it creates a
when you're
stable
separating them,
Mhm.
you're bringing the ether in between them.
Yeah, and you're creating a churning of
which
ether
creates
between them.
tension in
Yeah.
the ether.
And I can show you
It's
that.
going to seek to remove that tension and go
Yeah.
back to it together. Okay. Yeah,
That-
let's do that.
By the way, that's gravity.
Oh.
Gravity is not a property of the material.
So it's not we're
Gravity-
spinning the centrifugal force and being pulled towards the center.
Well, there is an aspect of that as far as the grounding is the centripetal force in a stable field, and then the magnetic is the centrifugal, the outward. So you have centripetal inward, centripetal outward, or centrifugal outward. In a stable field, you have, they're both are present. They're a conjugate aspect to them. They're where there's one, there's always the other, and that's really where the triadic nature of the ether comes in, because you have the ether source, you have the path to ground, or the stress tension that needs to be resolved back to ground. That's the dielectric. It goes out as the magnetic. That's the radiative, and it comes back to ground through the inertial process, essentially through the dielectric. So you have this triadic nature. You have source, radiative, ground, source, radiative, ground. And that is the picture of the Trinity happening in the nature of the ether itself. So
Scientific view of it, source is the way things naturally are, natural state, how it should be.
Mhm.
Then you have the tension, the twisting, the whatever.
Mhm.
That's good, and then you have the seeking to go back to natural state.
Yeah, and it goes back to natural state by radiating out. And
none of those things are bad things, right? No. We're like it seems in our the way, like these first of all, the words of tension and stress have negative connotation, but it's it's just the way things are.
Yeah.
In terms of it's your premise that nature is always going to seek ground.
Yeah. Do you want to see this in action?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to make you full screen.
Let me fire up the Ferrocell here. I gotta add a camera. I wonder if it'll allow me to add a camera. Let's see, extra camera.
It should if you do the 3 dots.
Let me make sure I'm plugged in here. Hold on 1 second.
All right. We're going to get a science experiment on culture of change.
Okay.
We're going to solve the nature of reality.
Yep, we're going to solve it all here. Extra camera, cam link. Okay.
Oh, I just saw it and then it went away.
Oh, where'd it go? Wonder if it's not letting me.
Try again.
Extra camera, cam link, share.
There it is.
Okay. There.
Oh, hang on. Let me do this. Whoops. Oh, I know what I need to do. I need to put you.
There you go. Yeah.
There.
Okay, so this is.
Or hold on, I gotta find the right one.
If you click on that little icon in the actual thing itself, it's the solo layout. I think it should pull it up.
Oh, my things have gotten all messed up here.
Like on the actual thing itself. There you go. Okay, let me make sure this is in focus. Okay, so what this is called a Ferrocell. And so, ping pong ball for my dog that got chewed on. Earplugs from work. Okay, so this is 2 pieces of optically flat glass that are sandwiching an oily substance that has ferrofluid in the middle.
What is ferrofluid?
So ferrofluid is like, you can buy it, online and stuff. It is nanoparticles of iron that are suspended in some type of a solution. So they're microscopic particles of iron. There's a ring of LED lights around the outside. And so when you bring a magnet underneath, so I have a piece of cardstock underneath here so that you can't actually see my hand through it. Otherwise it would distract you from the image. So you can see this here is a ring magnet. This is neodymium iron boron. This is a very powerful magnet, but just so you can see what we're looking at here. So let me zoom in so we can get a better view. And what you're going to see with the ring magnet is because there's a field all around the outside, and then there's going to be a field on the inside as well. And I like it because it perfectly shows what a field in the ether is going to look like, which is the shape of a toroid, i.e. a donut. And you'll be able to see the conjugate nature of the field by the
So what we're looking at is two pieces of glass with ferro, which is iron particles suspended in a solution.
Yep.
And you're putting a magnet on the bottom of this, and are we watching them? Are those lines the iron?
The line, what you're seeing here is you're seeing the light being literally bent by the magnetic field. And that I won't go into. I can like rabbit trail myself to death, but I won't. So just to define terms here, first of all, if you notice you can see like this is a toroid in the middle. You can see, and in person it looks a lot better, but there's actually like a toroid is think of a donut, and then if you were to cut the donut in half and to see the cross section, you would actually see like an hourglass shape in the middle. It's like you'd have a vortex, and then on the top, and a vortex on the bottom. So that's what you're seeing here. Is we're just seeing one side of the vortex that is going down into that center space there. The black ring itself is the actual physical imprint of the magnet. Wherever you see black is the dielectric. And
that is the tension that's being created.
That's the tension and the path back to ground.
Okay.
And it's taking its path back to ground through the magnetic, which are the white lines. And these are interference patterns with each other, because you have the dielectric is going back in, and then the magnetic is going out. And as they're passing each other, they are making an interference pattern that is the same as if someone looks up pictures of like the double slit experiment, you can see that same type of an interference.
I think we talked
pattern.
a little bit about that on the last show.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So this is the magnet on its side. So you can see and let me show that with a different magnet.
And is it only doing this because the magnet is shaped like a donut?
No, let me show you, get that other little magnet here. This is that's on its side. This is a little square, 3/8 inch square neodymium magnet. Okay. And so this is looking down into one of the poles of the magnet. And you can see this just doesn't show the full extent of the geometry, but if you were this was large enough, you would see the same toroidal shaped donut that is extending out. And it has the same, you can see the curvilinear like approach back down into this dielectric sink. This is back into counter space. So it's almost like looking like a window into the ether itself. And as the dielectric is going back in and the magnetic is radiating out, which the magnetic is the release, they're not separate things. They are literally the same thing, just they're all equally the ether. Like it's not like the magnetic is somehow more the ether than the dielectric. They're all equally the ether. They're just different in their relationship with one another. One is centrifugal, one is centripetal. This is looking at the magnet on its side. So the two black holes are the poles of the magnet, and then running across the middle would be, in modern science, they call that the block wall. Where like if you line those lines straight up, that's right through the center half of the magnet. That is essentially where the ether in this field geometry is it's not really located there, but that's kind of like its focal point there. And it's essentially like a flywheel that's spinning around at trillions of times a second that is in a stable magnet that is generating this etheric toroidal field geometry. and it releases itself in this curved linear outward. That's the light lines. And then it goes out. And then when it comes back in, it comes back in through that vortex, back into the ground. Let me see where my pencil is, right there. So, I mean, it's the quality of, unfortunately, is not that great. Let me see if I can.
Well, I am surprised by the fact that it's still a donut, right? Because what I noticed, if you put the other one up, use the circle magnet, you see the imprint of the magnet. But with the square, right, the black ring is the imprint of the magnet, you said. But with the square, you don't have that, but you still have the field as a donut.
The black on the square is let me find that magnet again. On the square donut, it's if in person you can actually on like larger square magnets too. In fact, let me hold on one second. Let me find I got like a 1-inch neodymium magnet. Hold on.
So as we wait for John to come back with the other magnets, we are going to talk about why this matters. And I think that's what we'll head there next. But it is very cool to see. And just to be clear, we're not looking, or are we? We're not looking at what the iron is doing. We're looking at what the electromagnetic field is doing. Is that right?
Well, yes, more or less. So this is a 1-inch neodymium magnet. This thing is incredibly powerful. It's very hard to get separated. But so there you can see that you can kind of see the square shape of the dielectric, and you can see how it is still showing that vortex, and it is still showing the dielectric or the toroidal shape nature of that's the magnetic going out. That's the creation of space. Everything visible is because of magnetism, and it is driven.
Explain that more.
Well, so as the ether is non-physical. The ether gets released, and it releases out as the magnetic, and it literally creates space. Between these white lines, there's black. That's not nothing. That's dielectric energy racing back into the ether itself, down to the center hole, down into the sink. You can think of like a drain. And if you were to take like a shower head and a drain, and if you were to make it so that the shower head just pours directly into the drain, that's kind of what's going on here. And that the water that's flowing is like the dielectric energy, and the sink is also the dielectric, and it is just spitting it back out the shower head. The shower head would be the magnetic. And
what's the iron for? Is it conductive, or what? Why iron? Why the ferro fluid?
So the iron would actually not be on the light lines. The iron would be on the black lines. And so essentially the reason why, as I understand it, the reason why the light shows up in between the black is because there's no iron there. So the light is passing in between little stacks.
Is the magnet moving the iron?
The iron is relatively stationary in this substance, although you can demonstrate, which I haven't formulated this yet. I need to figure out how to mix up the right proportion to it. But if you like put some ferrofluid in like a test tube, and then hold it over the pole of a strong magnet, you'll actually see the iron swirling in a vortex. And that's something I haven't.
Yeah, that's what you would expect, right?
Yeah.
That super powerful magnet you're using would move the metal.
Yeah. As it's accelerating, back to ground essentially. But it's so I'm going to try to bring this to Deborah, because it's just so pretty to looking at. It is
really cool. I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah, honestly, I don't fully either. I've got so many magnets popping around the thing, just like yanking.
And I've always had a science resistant brain, because I just never really believed the stories I was being told.
Okay, let me show you one more thing. So I've got here 2 neodymium. These are cylinder magnets. I just got a piece of wood in between them, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them between. That's a 1/4-inch piece of wood. Let me put them between
Wait, show it again.
This right here. So what I'm going to do is put them between a thicker piece of wood. Oh, dang it. They stuck together. Hold on. These things are so powerful. Like they're stuck together. I'm serious. These things are really, really powerful. Okay. Okay, there. Whew. Okay, I need to work out more. Okay. So, all right. So, what this is going to show is between the magnets. So there they are there. Between the magnets now, you can see the field interaction. So you have this black hole here and this black hole here. Those are the two poles of the magnets on the outer edge, and then you can kind of still see like the half circles of the poles there, and you can start to see that there's this tension that needs to be resolved. And then what's really interesting is right in between them, you can see right there, there's a new black space forming.
Is that the wood?
That's not the wood. That is the field between them voiding, literally by voiding, meaning like removing and going back to counter space, the tension, the dielectric and magnetic tension that's between these two magnets. And it is creating a new quote unquote, like term we use is like plane of inertia, but it's essentially forming a new middle of a magnet, because when you bring the two magnets together, let me go back to the 1/4 inch. When you bring two magnets together, they don't have two, they form like one magnet. So here is, they're a 1/4 inch apart. So you can see it's like resolving. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then when you finally bring them together completely, as I have now here, which I'm, that's the end of that. Now they look like just one magnet.
Yeah.
They have fused into one magnet. There's now just one plane of inertia between them. And here's what's really interesting. This kind of proves that the dielectric / the ether has no Cartesian values. Let's pretend for a minute that you were to have a magnet that was like 1,000 miles long. So the halfway point where that center line was, that halfway point would be, at the 500-mile mark. And if you were to cut that magnet in half, instantaneously, you would not have a North Pole and a South Pole. Instantaneously, you would have two complete magnets. And instantaneously, what was once there at the 500-mile mark would now be both at the 250-mile mark, the halfway point between the two new magnets. Because it's not moving through space, it's moving through counter space, which has no Cartesian values, which means 1,000,000 miles or 1,000 miles or 1 foot or an inch is irrelevant, because counter space.
So this is kind of where, and so I want to kind of shift a little bit here and talk about why does it matter, and what does it mean if the nature of reality is something like this, so different than what we've been told it is. When you describe like the distance between them is irrelevant, my brain, and again, science denier, my brain connects to the arguments that are being forwarded about quantum theories. Right. That again, I kind of think of it in that movie Interstellar with Matthew McConaughey, where you kind of have more of a grid and you can jump between parts and the distance doesn't matter, and the entanglement theories and whatnot. Like, how you don't buy into that, I know that about you, but like explain kind of the ether versus quantum, and then we can kind of shift and talk about some of the why it matters.
Well, like I said, quantum is kind of going through a pendulum swing where they're kind of swinging. They keep sneaking in the medium without acknowledging that's the medium. So you'll hear terms like quantum tunneling or quantum foam or quantum vacuum or quantum state or quantum field even, but they can't tell you what a field is, which we just looked at a field. There is a non-physical something surrounding a magnet that is interacting.
And just one more time, we're not looking the lines that we're seeing, the shapes that we're seeing from that experiment that you did, or the demonstration. We're not looking at the iron moving and forming those shapes.
Well, like I said, the iron. So the light lines are the magnetic, the black lines are the dielectric. The black lines are the centripetal pulling in. That's actually what is causing what we would think of as magnetism. Like we think of magnetism as being, that attractive force.
Yeah, magnets attract metal and they'll pull it.
But it's actually the dielectric
like
that's
MRI
doing
machines, right? You can't wear a necklace, and if you have an implant or something, you can die.
Yeah, rip it right out of your body. Yeah, it's actually the dielectric that's causing that, and that's the black line. So in the cell, which is what that little device is called, the iron filings would be aligning themselves along the black stretches, which is why the light doesn't shine through it, because there's iron in the way. So then it creates these pathways that the light is bending around. That's because that's the magnetic going out. There's no iron on those white lines.
And the reason there's no iron on the white lines is because the white lines are something else.
The white lines are the radiative outward expression of that field, which is the magnetic.
You said that the ether isn't physical. Can you say, like, it's what does that mean? Because I also feel like you're saying that the ether is sort of everything.
Yeah. So what happens? So where do we get matter from? Because that's the physical, right? That's the visual. Matter. This is the assertion that matter is the ether excited to such a frequency that it becomes a standing wave of the ether, which you think of when the ether gets excited, it expresses itself by releasing the magnetic, which is the radiative outward creation of space. So when it does that at such a high frequency, it literally just becomes a standing wave of that vibration and becomes matter. And it sounds
sort of Big Bangy.
Yeah, kind of. Which that doesn't scare me because ultimately God is still the who introduced the energy in the first place.
God spoke and bang, it happened. Yeah.
Which this gets down into the nature of light, because we tend to think of light as being something that travels. There's a light in front of me. Speed of light. Speed implies something that's moving. Well, nothing's moving. There's nothing traveling from A to B.
The disruption in the ether.
If you stand in the middle of a swimming pool that is perfectly flat and calm, and you start slapping your hands, you're going to create ripples and waves in the medium.
So when light happens, who's clapping their hands?
Well, when light happens, the first light was God speaking. And
I mean, when I come inside my room and I turn on the light.
Yeah.
So I'm the one clapping my hands.
This is the unification of all things. When you turn on the light, you are tapping into the electrical grid, and you're now coursing electricity through your house. Well, what the hell is electricity? Electricity is generated by taking a coil of wire, a conductive wire, which is actually a dielectric reflector, and you're spinning it inside of a magnet with its magnetic field, and you are crossing that dielectric reflector across a magnetic field, and it creates current. That's how a generator works. Or you can spin the magnet on the inside. There's different ways of doing it. But you're taking something and rotating that coil of wire and you're then plugging into it, and now you have electrical current.
And that's kind of the demonstration, like the slap in the water. That's what's happening.
Well, that's similar. So, and this is accepted, like no one disputes that, like this is how electricity is created or manifest or generated or whatever word you want to use for it. What is happening is you are crossing the dielectric and the magnetic together, kind of by rotating that the coil of wire inside of a magnet, and then it creates current along a wire, and it's the crossing of the dielectric and the magnetic that produces electricity. Fundamentally, light is an electromagnetic phenomenon. It has dielectric and magnetic components. Fundamentally, it is the identical to electricity as far as how it actually behaves. And the difference between the two is that light is bounded by the geometry of the conductor, electricity is bounded by the geometry of the conductor, whereas light is free range. So I actually came up with, let me show this real quick. This is a graphic I came up with. Light is a free range chicken. Electricity is a caged chicken, essentially. They're both the same. They're both the chicken.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. So when I'm turning on the light switch, I'm like, it's a different phenomenon. They're both light, but it's not the natural. It's not the natural light creation. It's artificial light creation.
Yeah, it's like essentially synthetic light. and be like the difference between saccharin and cane sugar.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
So the sun rising.
Well,
or
the sun
whatever,
is,
or whatever the sun
the sun
does.
is agitating the medium, however it does so as visible light. But here's the thing. It's not like you're now tapping into visible light. It's that the conductor that is conducting the electricity reaches a point where it basically can't contain the light any longer. And so it releases that either in the form of radiative heat, which is light, just low frequency light, like infrared, things like that. So, the wire gets warm. It's literally, it can't contain the light any electricity / light any further. So it releases it as light, heat, or you find a material that can withstand the temperature and not break down. And so it glows. So it releases as visible light. And that's how we end up using like a tungsten filament incandescent light bulb. It's you're coursing electricity through a wire and causing light to essentially escape the wire. And it's not light is a thing. It's now you're exciting the medium in the same manner using the dielectric and the magnetic together. It's happening in the same manner, so it manifests as visible light.
So we have about 8 minutes left, and yeah, we're gonna keep having these conversations because we never quite get through them. But as I said before, the show notes are John's paper on this, so you can go and check it out, and come back and revisit the conversation, because I think we did kind of jump right into it without appropriate setup for people that haven't read it, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, as I said, it's not entirely a standalone piece. I'm going to read this. Well, by the time this will be released, I'll have read it last night,
and I'll put that link in the show notes as well for your show.
The people that have been listening to my show regularly, which I'm sure there's a lot of crossover between that and your shows, that they will be familiar with these concepts already because I've been talking about them for the last 8 weeks. But I will eventually put this in the context of a larger standalone article that explains what I mean by dielectric and all that kind of stuff. So if you read it and you're like, what is he talking about? Then
just remember, as you're reading it, you can use the lookup feature for a lot of the words that he uses, which is what I did. So, but in the few minutes that we have left, what is where do you see this going? So I was talking to General Quast on Thursday of last week. We were talking about, I'm doing his show on Wednesday, and then next week's Culture of Change will be part 2 of that conversation. He'll be on my show. And so everybody look forward to that. It's going to be great. We're going to talk culture of space, law in space, how is the space revolution going to transform reality for us and the human experience inside of reality. And that can go any number of ways. So it's all theoretical, but good. But when we were talking kind of in preparation for that, we both agreed that it feels like we're on the cusp of something. Like there's some, I think a lot of people think this in terms of there's a golden age coming. Maybe we'll get a justice phase, maybe aliens, maybe, whatever, right? Like there's some big foundational shaking thing that it feels like, right? Like we can't, but it feels like that something's going to kind of shift the ground beneath our feet. And, so in it, like assuming that you agree with the feeling, and even if you don't, where, like, how does this is kind of an obsession of yours, right? Like you're pretty focused on the ether stuff. Where's it going? Like where, and what would your desire be in terms of how this, this body of truth would be used and how it would change the world?
Yeah, there's definitely a tensional feeling, and the need for catharsis. I mean, good grief, just in the last 10 years, it's just been like one giant churning. Forget the fourth turning, it's the fourth churning. We need catharsis. I feel like I think I've even mentioned this to you before, that even in the last 15 years, just thinking about the nature of the financial system, the political system, and the medical system, and the scientific, all that stuff, it's like, it can't keep going on like this forever. Something's got to give.
Yeah.
I don't know that this is my own, it's one of my passion, hobby horse things I love to dig on, but leaning on what the Apostle Paul said in Romans, I don't think that suddenly everybody coming to a knowledge that actually the reality works this way is going to necessarily affect a great awakening. It might. Paul kind of just indicates that actually it's clear enough as it is, and people reject that. I think it might prompt a lot of people to kind of wake up and realize that, hey, we need. I mean, that's been Chris Paul's story. Digging down and realizing the only thing that's left standing is God. And, that's certainly my prayer, that people would have that response. On like a more temporal, immediate level, understanding the nature of reality is going to yield better results in your scientific explorations. There's a funny video that I played on my show. You may have seen this. It's a comedy troupe, and there's a guy that his girlfriend is getting frustrated because he won't help around the house, and he's like, don't worry, everything's under control. He's like, what are you talking about? He's like, look at this basket. It's magic. If I just put my dirty clothes into it, the next morning they show up on my bed folded and clean. And she's like, you got to be joking. He's like, I thought it was crazy too at first, but there's more. And then he shows her the coffee table, and the coffee table, he's like, whatever I put on there, the next morning it's clean. Like pizza boxes, beer cans. So I've even done experiments seeing how much shit I can pile on there, and it's always clean the next morning. And then the next scene is the cops are showed up, and he's like, I thought she got up to get a drink of water in the middle of the night. I don't know where she went, but I assume she fell on the coffee table because she's not here in the morning. So it's like he had the ability. So Paul and I were joking, calling that the quantum laundry basket and the quantum coffee table. He had the ability to predict a lot of things, but that had limits because his basic ontology was wrong, and he didn't really understand what was going on. And so predictive ability doesn't equal understanding, and lack of understanding leads to a breakdown of the system. And I think that's kind of what's happening in quantum a little bit right now. So I think that if people understand the nature of how simple everything is, that it's all just a combination of dielectric and magnetic together, pulling from the source, the ether, which they are themselves equally the ether as the source is, which is how it becomes a triadic nature. The applications for energy production, for propulsion, for health, because how your human body functions. I mean, you just go down the list, and all this stuff just plugs into everything. And it's utterly fascinating. But on a spiritual level, like to me, it is more encouraging to my faith. And I know that there will be people that would be encouraged by this type of thing. But as far as like, if we could just teach people that the ether is like this, then they'll turn to God. I mean, Romans 1 kind of makes that unfortunately clear, that they need an intervention of the Holy Spirit. They need that path to ground restored. And that's not something we can do on our own. We've been trying for 6,000 years, and we keep failing. We need the ultimate grounding rod, which happens to be the shape of a cross. So,
amen. Yeah, and that's but that's the thing, I think, is if we have a more true foundation for science, for example, and you rattled off a whole bunch of different domains that this would affect, I think you're right. If we are working from a place that's true and not centrally manipulated, and not that, the funding goes here, the funding goes there to drive a certain outcome. Climate change is one of those things that, all the resources, all the funding, all the everything that went to getting every corporation on the planet to set net zero goals. And in my opinion, the entire foundation of that thing is wrong. If we're operating with a more solid foundation, we're going to have better outcomes. And maybe that's how we get the golden age. We're going to have to leave it there. If you want to read John's paper, it is in my Substack, asheandamerica.substack.com. And I'll also include your episode from last night on the No Treason podcast, so folks can hear you read the paper, because a lot of people don't read,
I'm going to read it out loud. So
and with that, we're going to get out of here. Huge shout out to Frequency Apps for sponsoring the show. Badlandsmedia.tv/patches. Also get yourself some soft disclosure, softdisclosure.com. Use promo code LotionRaider. head over to the Badlands Shop, badlandsmedia.tv/shop, to get all manner of stuff. There's Father's Day coming up, birthdays are happening, anniversaries, all kinds of stuff. Shop America first before you go to Amazon and buy cheap Chinese crap. See if there's America First options. badlandsmedia.tv/shop. And then finally, come hang out with us in GART. This is what we do at GART, and it's an absolute blast. And badlandsmedia.tv/events. You can get a virtual ticket if you can't be there in person. You should try to come to an in-person GART, though, because man, are they amazing. And as we were talking about before the show, GART always comes at the exact right time. So with that, we're going to get out of here. Please hit the like button for us. It helps us out quite a bit. And if you have not yet chatted on this show, just drop into the chat and say what's up, or drop a period, or, tell us your life story. It's fine any way you go, but unique chatters is also a metric that helps us out quite a bit. We're going to get out of here. Everybody remember that change happens one conversation at a time. So be brave and speak the truth. We'll see you next time.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.